Hello, you wonderful people. Today, I want to share with you a project that I built that allows you to summarize YouTube videos. And if you want to see the full tutorial how I built it, you can check out our blog post series. You can find it on our website, and I'll make sure to link in the description below. It's 10 parts, and it shows you everything you need to know to build an application with Next.js and Strapi. Before I show you the project in action, we are using Next.js for our front end because it's awesome. All of our components are powered by ShadCn and Tailwind. And to make our AI API calls, we're using AI SDK from Vercel. Really easy library to get started and really awesome. And of course, for our backend, we're using Strapi. And you'll be able to find the completed project code on my repo. And I'll make sure to link in the description below. And after we do the project walkthrough, I'm going to show you how to set this project up locally so you could play with it or use it to jumpstart your next project. Our project consists of a landing page. We have our top navigation, our hero section, our features, and our footer. All of this data is coming from our Strapi application. If you take a look at our Strapi application, under our content manager, our global page is responsible for our content for our header and footer. This is exactly what you see here on top and on the bottom. And then we have our home page, which is using our dynamic zones. And currently we only have the hero section and our feature section. And that data represents our landing page content here. And if you wanted to add more items, you could easily add more components here in the home page and render them in your front end. And I'll show you this in more details in just a moment. We are able to click the sign in button, which will take us to the form. If you don't have an account, you could either sign up, but because I have an account, I'm going to go to sign in. I'm going to use my password and username, or username and password, click sign in. And because my password is terrible, we have this message that says change your password. Perfectly fine. When you're greeted by this dashboard, you're going to have our input bar here that allows you to add a YouTube video URL and summarize. But before we do that, you are able to access all your summaries in the summary section, which will have all the summaries. We have our search, we have our pagination, which is kind of cool. You'll be able to click on the item, and when our item loads, you're going to see our awesome page editor where you're able to easily add stuff. For instance, let me make that bold, and you're able to delete or update your summaries. And all this data is stored in our Strapi application. For instance, if I go to summary, you're going to see that I have all my summaries that I already created. So back in the global page, we also have our account page, which has the number of credits that you have, your first name, last name, and something about you. You could also update your image if you wanted to. I just recently did this great talk with Jack Harrington. I'm going to go ahead and copy this URL. And back in our application, I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. Now, notice that I have 0 credits. So in theory, this should not let me make this request. So let's create summary and see what it says. It says, hey, you have insufficient credits. So you could see that we have error messages implemented either from some errors that could happen from our form validation when we're trying to submit a form, or if we have errors coming from Strapi, like this one, insufficient credits to generate your summary. And we'll take a look at the code in more details, but just as a reminder, you could check out the completed article series on our website that walks you through every step that I went through with these helpful little video segments and code snippets to allow you to build this whole application yourself. But with that being said, if I go to my Strapi account, I have users, and I think I'm logged in as test user. So you'll have multiple users that are able to create accounts, and none of the users will be able to see somebody else's data, right? We're going to secure our data using policies and middleware to make sure that each summary is only accessible by the appropriate user. And I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. But before that, let's generate our summary. So I'm using test user account now. I have no credits. Let me go ahead, add 3 credits and save. Okay, now you could see here that we have 3 credits. Let's go ahead and generate our summary. This is going to go ahead and get the transcript for the YouTube video. That's going to pass it to our OpenAI endpoint, and that's going to generate our transcript. Once the summary is generated, it's going to redirect us to the summary page where you're going to see the video. You're going to see the awesome summary of the video. You could either update stuff. For instance, I want to make this bold. Maybe I want to delete this stuff here. Maybe I don't need it. And then you could click Update Summary, and it's going to go ahead and update your summary. And this new summary that we just created, it's going to be saved in my Strapi instance. So if I go to Summaries, and we're going to take a look here, here's the summary that we just generated. And notice we're using our user ID to make that relationship. What's cool about this, for instance, this video belongs to me. I just created it as the test user. You could see here, test user, I created this video. Let's open a new tab, incognito window, and I'm going to sign in as, I believe, other user. And the password is still test user. Is it other user? Okay, the password was other user. I completely forgot. If we take a look at summaries, the summary that I just generated doesn't show up here, right? Because it doesn't belong to other user. If I go to other user summary, you could see that I have the ID for this other user's summary. What happens if I try to hard code it here? Take a look. I'm going to paste it in, try to trick the system, and boom. Can we make this error prettier? We probably can, but what we did is that we used policies and middleware to check which user has what permissions. And you will learn all of that in the blog post, and I'll walk you quickly through the code here today to show you all the important parts. But you could see that we are throwing our error with this, not the prettiest. Again, I didn't focus too much on UI. I focused more on the functionality, but you could see that here, you can't access this entry. This is the error that we get. And I made it show the error just so it's easier for me, but in production, you probably don't want this. And we could click go back, and it's going to take us back to where we were. And notice our application doesn't crash. We did have the scarce looking error because that's how I made the UI look, but we're going to learn about all those things, having error boundaries in appropriate places. Notice when we ran into that error, it only stopped working here, but the rest of our application was working. So that's pretty awesome. And again, we have full CRUD functionality. We could update, we could delete, we could create a new summary. We have our account management where we could manage our account. We have our helpful error messages. If I try to update right now, it's going to say first name is required. Hey, we know that. So it's not going to allow us to update the form. But if I change it and update, boom, everything's perfect. Everything updated here. And of course, all those changes are going to be reflected in our Strapi application. Notice it now says Poly, which is kind of cool. And notice when I created a summary, I went ahead and deducted 1 credit from my account. So this is the application in a nutshell. I'm not going to go to too much because I think we covered all the most important features from our homepage to our dashboard with our summaries. For our summaries, we have our video, we have our summary. We are able to update the title, the summary. We could delete it. We took a look at our account page and everything that we use here from form submission with server actions. We also, in our project for this submission here to handle calling our API, I actually create a Next.js route instead of using server actions because I wanted to make sure that you have 2 examples of either using Next.js routes or using server actions to submit forms. And then for summaries here, we have our search. For instance, if I type boot dev, notice here, it searches in the text, but also in the title. We're able to do that. And then we have our pagination working. So awesome. So now that we see our project, we see how it works. And let me log out. Take us back to our homepage. Let's take a look at the code and just cover the most important features. We're going to start by pulling the code base, and then we'll take a look at the project. So go ahead, navigate to paulbraslovsky/Epic Next Strapi project with dashes, click on the code button, and you could use HTTP here and use git clone. I actually have GitHub CLI installed, so I'm just going to copy this command. And in my terminal, I'm going to go ahead and paste it in, and I'm going to call it Epic Demo and click Enter. This is going to go ahead and pull our code down. Then I'm going to CD into our Epic Demo. And if I do ls, you're going to see our Frontend project, which is our Next.js project. You're going to see our Backend. And then I have some helpful scripts here to make the setup much easier. So let's type yarn setup. And this is going to go ahead and install all the dependencies. for both your Next.js project and your Strapi project. Once everything is installed, you could run yarn seed, and this is going to go ahead and import all of our data, which is for our landing page and some of our demo summaries. And I'm going to go ahead and open this in VS Code first. And if you want to start both your projects, you could run yarn dev. This is going to start your Next.js project and your Strapi server and run them concurrently. Because this is starting for the first time, you will have to add your first admin user. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And make sure you pick the most secure password. For me, it's monkey1234. Why? Because I'm running locally, and click Let's Start. And here you're going to be greeted with the dashboard. You're going to see all of our content types, our global page, which is responsible for our data for our header and footer. You're going to see our homepage, which is responsible for our data for our homepage using our dynamic zones, like we showed before. If you navigate to summaries, you're going to have some dummy summaries, and you're going to have some user data. One thing to keep in mind, because we seeded our data, I also enabled all the permissions that you will need. If you take a look at roles and at public, you're going to see that our global data has find enabled, our homepage has find enabled, and our summary doesn't have anything enabled because we want only authenticated users to be able to find their content. So if you go back to roles and click on authenticated, you're going to see that our summary is set up in a way where you need to be authenticated to have access to create, find, update, delete, and find one. Now that this is set up, if we navigate to our landing page, you're going to see the same website. And now you could go ahead, either sign in or we could sign up. So I'm going to click sign in, and I'm going to click sign up, and I'm going to say test user 3, test user 3 at email.com. Test user as the password, sign up, and boom, we'll be signed in with a brand new account. And if we take a look at summaries, we have none because we didn't add any summaries. If you go to account, we don't have any credits. And here you could add your first name and your last name and add an image, which we saw. But the most important part that I want to kind of walk through, at least in this video, is a brief outline of the code, and then some things I did in code to show you my way of thinking. So let's do that now. And one thing to keep in mind, let me go ahead and add some credits to our new user. And we're going to say 5, click save. Back into my application, even though I have 5 credits, if I try to create a summary, it's going to fail. And it's going to say, please provide OpenAI key in the environment variable. Since you do need OpenAI API key, you could go ahead and paste yours in. But I just want to make the call out because we're using OpenAI to create our transcript. You will need your own OpenAI key. Now here in VS Code, let's do a quick rundown. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but now that you have the project, you can explore the code. And if you have any questions, definitely stop by open office hours on Discord, 12:30 p.m. CST time, Monday through Friday. In our backend folder, this is where we have our Strapi application. Our frontend folder, this is where we have our Next.js application. The quick call out I want to do in our backend, a couple of things that I did here that you would say intermediate Strapi features is using a middleware. And if you take a look at source, we have our global middleware with our is_owner policy. And basically, this is responsible checking if the logged in user is the responsible owner of the content type or collection type they're trying to update. Once you have your is_owner policy, wherever you want to use it, you have to add it to the route. So if we take a look at our API and we take a look at summaries inside the routes, we have the summary.ts file, and you're going to see that in the configuration, I went ahead and added the is_owner middleware, which basically on the find route, find one, or update or delete, it's going to check, hey, are you the authorized user for that collection type that you try to update? If not, you don't have access to it, goodbye. If so, go ahead and make the changes. I also created on summary create because what I want to do when the summary is created, we go ahead and append the user ID. I want to do it on the server, so that way on the front end, people can't just do something silly and add any random user ID. on the back end, they don't get access to it. It's done automatically within Strapi. We go ahead, append the user ID, and I also wanted to deduct the 1 credit that they spent. So we could quickly take a look at that middleware. It's here inside this middleware folder on summary create. So the first thing we do here is check if you are logged in and you are the user. If not, we say you're not authenticated. The second thing we do is check if you have enough credits. If you don't have enough credits, we say, hey, you don't have enough credits. And then otherwise, we go ahead and continue. And in this case, what we're going to do, we are going to modify the data by appending the logged in user ID to our user ID. And then afterwards, we're going to go ahead and update the user's credit by deducting 1 credit because you just created a summary. Those are the 2 big callouts that I wanted to make in the backend. Now let's jump into the front end. Here in our front end project, if we take a look at source, you're going to see the app folder. This is responsible for our routes and all of our pages. If you use the parentheses, whenever you're naming a route, there's going to be a route group. So for instance, for auth, I'm grouping my sign-in and sign-up forms. For protected, I'm grouping all the routes for the summaries and accounts because they're protected. And the way you handle protected routes is you could create a middleware in Next.js where you could go ahead and create a check for protected routes. For instance, we just have dashboard as protected route, and then you could check if user doesn't exist, kick him out to sign in, otherwise go ahead and let them do whatever they have to. In the app folder, you could also define API routes. So for instance, here we have an API route for getting the transcript and getting the summaries. So one route that we call, it's going to go ahead and get the transcript for the YouTube video that we provided. And then afterwards, we have our summarize route where we're able to pass the transcript, and it's going to go ahead and create the summary. Again, I'm not going to talk too much on detail, but just know that you're able to create API routes that then you could call from your form submit. So if we take a look inside our component folder and we take a look at our summary form, you're going to see here that in the handle form submit, I'm making a call to those 2 Next.js API routes. The first one, I'm making a call to API get transcript. This is going to go ahead and get a transcript. Once we have our transcript, I call that second Next.js route to summarize our data. And then finally, when I have everything, I go ahead and call my save summary service to save everything to Strapi. And if you're wondering, like, you have routes, you have services, what does that mean, Paul? So to kind of help me organize my project a little bit better, I went ahead and created a data folder. And the data folder is broken down into loaders. Loaders are responsible for getting data. So for instance, we have loaders for get homepage data, get global data, get metadata. And what they do is they make a get request to the specified endpoint to get our data. Then after our loaders, we have our actions to kind of keep the actions more readable and not try to stick everything into them. I went ahead and created services and validations. So here you could see we have our auth actions. We have here register user action, login user action, and logout user action. And then we also have get auth token. And all these actions are responsible for particular use cases, but I didn't want to stick all the logic in there. So for instance, inside the register user action, when we're doing validation, getting the sign up form schema from the validation folder. So I created my schema inside the validations folder under auth.ts file. If you take a look here, you could see that we're using Zod to create all of our validation. And instead of sticking all of this inside the action, I'm just able to keep it in this validation folder and just import it into my action and use it here. And I did the same thing for service. Instead of sticking all the business logic in here, I know that at some point the action is going to need to do something after everything is validated. So instead of sticking all the logic here, I created a register user service that we could find inside the services folder inside auth. And here you could see that we have register user service, and register user service is responsible for making that call to that register endpoint in Strapi and creating a user. And that way it makes it a little bit easier for me to kind of think about all the different parts of my code and what they're responsible for instead of just sticking everything into action. So a form will call an action will call a service. And if there's validation, that is provided inside the validation folder, and wherever you want to use it, for instance, you want to use it inside an action, you would import it into that action. And that's basically it. I know I'm kind of glassing through a lot of it, but I wanted to kind of show you like a quick overview of the code base. Now that you have it, you can check it out. So now that you have a brief overview of the project, you were able to pull the project to your local computer and play around with it. If you want to jump into more details and learn how I built it, definitely check out the blog post that I wrote. It took me forever to make, so I really appreciate if you all used it to learn how to use Next.js with Strapi. And more importantly, if you have any questions, go ahead and join us at our open office hours on Discord, 12:30 p.m. CST time, Monday through Friday. And I'm going to go ahead to make sure that I link to the blog post in the description below for you to check out. But with that being said, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your support, and I will see you in the next one.